So, experiencing your emotions. Yeah, what we often do, you know, is we do the first two. We acknowledge that we have them, and we feel those kind of things, but we don't do the experience side. And it's the experience side that clears your soul. And John Bradshaw wrote one thing that I'd have to agree with, and that is that grief is the biggest emotion, and grief is the healing emotion. So in other words, you're going to need to do quite a lot of crying.
Yeah.
Now, the thing to remember about experiencing emotion is this. Your soul is automatically built to experience emotion. So, if you're not experiencing emotion, it's not because you're not capable of experiencing it, because God created you to be capable of experiencing it. The issue is that you have created blocks to experiencing your emotion. So, rather than let's talking about how to feel, the truth is, you already know how to feel. You already know how to feel every emotion. At the soul level, that's the way you were created. When you were born, do you think that you turned off any emotion? No. You were a baby, you had no mental conception of any emotion, did you? And yet you felt every one of them, didn't you? So what's the problem become? The problem has become how I block my emotion. So really what we need to address in order to experience our emotion is all of our fears about why we don't want to experience our emotion. That's what we need to address. When you address all of those fears, as each fear falls away, a new emotion will pop its head up and you'll be able to feel it. Right? So what are some of your fears about dealing with emotion?
People won't like me.
People won't like me.
I'll die. Insanity.
That it won't stop.
That there's something wrong with me.
Embarrassment.
Oh, you got lots. You're writing all these out because these are really good. These are really good. Embarrassment.
Everyone will know and see.
Shame.
Shame.
Fear of shame.
Feeling weak.
Yeah.
That's actually vulnerable.
It'll be too painful.
I'll lose control.
Yeah. Obviously.
Unworthy.
All right, can you start seeing what's going on? The reason why we can't feel these emotions is because we've got all of these beliefs. And we think all of these beliefs are true. And maybe at one point in our life they were true. And that's all the more reason for us to believe they're true. But the truth is none of those things are true from God's perspective. From God's perspective, all of these things are just fears about our feeling an underlying thing. So what are we afraid of here, really?
Rejection.
We're afraid of feeling the emotion of nobody wanting us, aren't we? Right? If we believe people won't like me if I feel my emotion, then I'm actually afraid of feeling an underlying emotion. Can you see that? And the underlying emotion is, if people don't like me, I'm actually afraid that nobody will like me at all. There's a feel. So what do I feel right now? I feel like nobody likes me. And I'm not letting myself feel it. Like, it's there within me, but I'm not letting myself feel it. So if I feel that, if I'm afraid of that, I need to feel that nobody likes me. I need to put myself in a place where I'm willing to feel that. If I'm afraid of that, where do I need to put myself? Into failure. Be a failure. And feel that. Feel it like you're a failure. Everything that you're afraid of. How do I do that?
Postpone that one.
Sorry, Graham?
Don't be afraid of dying. Rather than be frightened, just let it go and say, okay, I'm going to die.
Yeah. Let yourself feel like you're going to die.
That doesn't sound very frightening. It's, oh well, I'm going to die, I'm going to die. So you're not really feeling it. You're not really facing emotion.
If you let yourself feel that you are dying, right, and put yourself in a position, and usually when we have that emotion, there's usually something that happened in our childhood that caused us to feel like we'll die if we deal with an emotion. So usually there's been some abuse, or there's been some very traumatic event like a car crash, or lots of different events like that, that cause us to be so afraid after that point. Yeah. I had this one a lot. It gets projected at me all the time. But this one. It's going to be never ending. A lot of these fears, remember what fears are? They are... So they're false expectations appearing real, right? Or you could say they're false emotions appearing real, or expectations, right? Like, how can I go insane if I'm feeling my causal emotions? Isn't it the truth, really, that the time I'm going to be insane is when I'm not feeling my causal emotions? And how can it be never-ending? Isn't it the truth, really, that I'm obviously a finite being. Only God's infinite. Right? So therefore, my emotion must be finite. Doesn't that make sense? Embarrassment. What's that about? Yeah. Making a fool of yourself. So I believe I'm a fool. Right? In my heart I believe I'm a fool, and I'm trying to constantly prove to myself otherwise.
So if you block these things, how do you feel if I'm physically putting myself in the situation to feel it?
Well, that's what the law of attraction is there for, to put you in the situation to feel it. The truth is that every single day, if you have this feeling within you of failure, you'll be finding already in your life you'll be attracting failure. The truth is that the law of attraction is already putting into your life absolutely everything to trigger this emotion right now. So this is why it's so important to look at the law of attraction, because the law of attraction is there to tell you what you're not dealing with right now, right today, right this moment. And don't forget that your law of attraction is good at, it has, if we can use the term good and bad connotations, if we can use those terminologies, the law of attraction will bring you everything. You are here today, and that's obviously something that's positive about your law of attraction from your perspective. You're wanting to learn about truth, so that something caused you to be here, listening to this insane man.
AJ, with the law of attraction, are there a hierarchy of neuroses? So your biggest ones come up first, and then later on, when you've got rid of those, then you get a bit more failure or a bit more something else. Is that how it works, or do you get the works all the time?
Like I'm close to it now.
The law of attraction operates upon your collective soul condition right at this moment. It's just the areas which you become aware of that you probably deal with firstly. So the truth is, right at this moment, you might have 100 different emotions you have yet to resolve. Right? And if you do, the law of attraction will be bringing to you lots of different events in your day-to-day life to trigger every one of those 100 emotions.
Really?
Yeah. Now, often we don't allow ourselves to consider it until we exercise our will to see different ones. And so that's why we deal with one and then we deal with the next and then we deal with the next. Right? But the truth is the law of attraction is actually operating upon your complete soul condition, not just on the emotion you're dealing with right now.
That would depend though on how much you interact with life. I mean, if you sit in the cave and meditate in a puddle of peacefulness, you're not going to talk to anyone, you're not going to meet anybody, the phone's not going to ring, so
That's
nothing's
why
going to
I
happen.
That's why I don't recommend isolation.
Someone
Like
might
when
jack
you come
him
down
in
to
your
the
roof
village,
though.
the village dog runs in front of you and
Yeah.
gets kicked.
No, honestly, if we all went to a monastery for a year, do you think there'd be as many emotions triggered as if you lived down here in Sunshine Coast for a year? So where's the best place for your soul? Sunshine Coast, obviously. That's why you're here. You think it's the best place, obviously. Your soul does. You attracted it, right? So this is the best place for you to be, right? A lot of people go off to a monastery or off to meditation or off to these different things, off to India to find myself or whatever. And the truth is, in a lot of those cases, we do find a portion of ourselves because we have the right attitude at that time to find a portion of ourselves, right? But the truth is, you can find everything about yourself right here. And in fact, right here is far better because you'll get triggered a lot more here than you're going to be in some monastery in the middle of India. Isn't that right? Yes. Yeah. How many of you want to run away from your life? Yeah. No. Want to let's say get rid of a good half of it. What it's attracting. But you see, it's just like everything that your life is attracting is perfectly aligned to deal with your current emotions. God's laws are perfect. This is the thing to understand about God. God's laws are perfect. The law of attraction is perfect in its operation. All right? So everything that's in your current life right now, you attract it. And it's there to help you expose and experience an emotion. Everything is there to help you expose and experience an emotion. Now, what will you do with it? Are you going to experience the emotion, or you're just going to dismiss that one and go on to the next one? And all of you know what happens in your life when you do that, don't you? What happens? The next day or next 3 days, it's back again, isn't it? And it's back again, it's back again, it's back again, and after a year of that, yeah, and everything starts degrading in your body and you get more sick and unwell because we avoid these laws of attraction that are occurring in our lives. So, understand that the reason for all fears is because we have these emotions within us that cover over this whole list of things we don't want to feel. And it's your choice to not feel that creates all of your inner turmoil. And mine too.
I just wanted to sort of share that, I don't know whether people realise or not, but once you've dealt with the issue, which I haven't dealt with any, I don't think, in conclusion, but like you said, you never ever have to deal with that again. Ever, ever. So
Ever.
Whatever pain you're in, once you get to the bottom of it, you never ever have to feel that particular pain
And
again.
again, yeah.
That was really like an aha moment for me. I went, oh, good, let's get into it.
Yeah. Because if you avoid an emotion now, you're just putting it off for later. And in fact, if you avoid an emotion now, what are you doing? You're projecting it. As soon as you project it, you're causing more damage around yourself. There's a law of compensation, karma it's called, right? Back on yourself for that as well. So what are you actually doing every time you avoid an emotion? You're making it worse for yourself for later.
Yeah.
That's really what you're doing. Yeah. And the key is, do you want to do that? Well, obviously a lot of us do, right? I know I am. So,
is there, when you're talking about those different thoughts, then under each of those is a different emotion, is there a level of emotions to experience under, like a layers of emotions that you go through to get to the bottom? Because I imagine if you're denying something and getting to the point of going, wow, the truth that this really happened to me, and then therefore grief for yourself, for the love of yourself.
Yeah, it is true that, it's like layers of an onion, right, really. It's just like emotion after emotion, and there are some very core ones. But the question I'd have to ask is, why do you want to know what the core one is when you're not yet really to feel that one? See, a lot of times what we do with our mind is we're constantly trying to look for the answer at the end, when the answer that's right there facing us right at this moment, we're ignoring. How do you get to the inside of an onion? You peel off each.
Cut it.
Clever lady. I didn't think of that.
I'm very anxious for you to tell us how to discover what those layers are. I mean, even if it's only the outside one, how do I find out what that is?
I've already told you how.
Okay, so I'm attracted to all you folks to come and mix with today. What does that taught me? I mean, what's my
Well, it's obviously a lovely emotion. You want to find out some more truth and you want to see how it affects your life. That's really good. What's wrong with that? Yeah. Like what happened yesterday?
I can't think of anything adverse that happened or didn't have any bouncing. I don't think I saw anybody yesterday, actually. That wasn't a good example. One thing that might have been an adverse thing, I'll tell you that could really work as badly as this. I'm waiting for a passport to be produced in Canberra, and it's taken weeks and weeks and weeks. At last, a letter came after about 6 weeks or more then, and it was an inquiry from them. They needed a different photo. And the chap who, from the British Embassy in Canberra, mind you, it was a handwritten envelope, and the script was so poor that it went on a detour to S before it came back to my place, so another week was lost.
Yeah.
And so, anyway, I dealt with that immediately and didn't waste a day. And then
Can I stop you now, though? What was the feeling you had?
Well, annoyance, I suppose.
Right, what's annoyance?
I recognise that I've been judgmental, thinking that they should have been capable of better.
Well, no, let's...
I was known to be a letter and waited weeks and weeks more, and it came yesterday. And you know, it came back with my name misspelled.
You're attracting this, yes.
Did I make that silly fellow in the office?
Yes.
Scrawl on the envelope?
Yes.
And make them misspell.
Everything that happens to you is created by you.
I spelled it properly.
What's the real you? What's the real you?
Should I know?
It's your soul.
Which made him annoyed with you, so you just got your name to delay it
Yeah,
a week.
yes, actually that idea went through my head. Surely everyone is just to, you know, get
Yes.
back at me.
Yeah.
Would you?
Yeah.
I wouldn't do that to him.
Wouldn't you?
Anyway, I told him he was forgiven.
He was forgiven.
I hope he
But
believes.
in your heart you haven't forgiven him. The truth is that you are annoyed.
Yeah.
It's your soul's emotion. It's not your handwriting that created this. It's not what you wrote that created this. It's your soul's emotion. There's a feeling of annoyance. Annoyance is an anger-based feeling, is it not?
Yeah.
So what's under annoyance? What do you feel underneath annoyance? Frustrated is another anger-based emotion. That's a denial of the underlying emotion. What's under the frustration?
So how can I deal with that?
Well, this is what I'm trying to help you do right now.
I'll let you have it.
No, I've done enough of my own. I'm not dealing with yours. What I'm saying to you is the law of attraction brought this event into your life. Right? And you just skipped over it. like you're doing right now, in fact. You are skipping over it and ignoring it. You are not allowing yourself to go into the deeper emotion. The deeper emotion that created it. Right? And you want to skip over it. You do not want to know what the deeper emotion is at the moment.
And will it be an emotion just related to that subject matter, or will it be a general emotion that an unfortunate way I have of dealing with all my...
So what are you trying to do now?
Divert.
No, you're not. No, you're trying to intellectualise your emotion. Can you see what you're doing? You're intellectualising your emotion right now. You're trying to find out an intellectual reason for what's going on. You felt annoyed. Go back to that feeling of annoyance. Now follow that path. Down into annoyance, down into frustration, down into anger. And what's underneath that? Follow that path. Emotionally follow that path down. At the moment you're skipping over that with your mind. Right? There's an emotion in your soul that created all of those events. So what's the emotion? Does anyone want to have a guess at what the emotion is?
Is it fear? Fear.
Well, fear is a capping emotion too, isn't it? Well, that's pretty general. Unworthiness, isn't it? That's pretty big.
What about loss of control?
Right, wanting to have control, so being out of control, fear of being out of control. What else? What things upset you? You are upset about your name being misspelled. See, now you're intellectualising it.
I'm annoyed at the delay,
Patience.
rather than the technicalities of how it's
So why are you annoyed at the delay?
because I've got a deadline to keep and I'm going to miss it if I'm not careful.
So how does that make you
I
feel?
suppose I'm annoyed that I committed to a holiday thingy
Yeah.
that has to be done by a certain date,
Mhm.
and it's going to expire very soon.
Okay.
I can't go.
So what's going to happen if you don't get your passport?
I'll probably lose about $1,500 worth of holiday.
How does that feel?
Rotten.
Go deeper, what's wrong? How does it feel?
Wasteful.
So, wasteful's not really an emotion, is it? There's a feel. See, this is where it's quite difficult at the start, isn't it? Can you see that? Right. Because a lot of times what we're feeling is this top level capping thing. Like annoyed, and then we try to dismiss it. I try harder. So what do I normally do? Try harder. So that's what you've done. Tried harder to get everything on time, get everything sorted out. You know, try. But it's your soul doing the opposite. Your soul's doing the opposite of that. Your soul's saying, no, hang a sec. I need to trigger this emotion that's going on inside of me that you're totally oblivious to at the moment. That's what your soul's saying, right? So the key is to get below that annoyance and into the deeper stuff.
And then the passport would arrive quickly?
The passport will probably arrive the next day.
Yeah.
After you've dealt with the emotion.
Of the emotion.
After you've let go of the emotion. Yeah. I've had things happen within a day when I've dealt with the emotion. And then I've had other things wait 6 months while I haven't dealt with the emotion. Right, when they could have happened in a day.
But that situation, it didn't start out that she was necessarily annoyed about it. It was set the whole thing in motion, sent off for the passport, information, etc. Knowing that she's got the deadline.
But the soul has an emotion, and it's been there for ages. It's been there from her childhood. And there's going to be has there been lots of events in your life where people have let you down and got late and delayed and all those kind of things?
Yeah. I'm more likely to be when it's late.
So that the circumstance doesn't really matter. It's what you get, what feeling.
The feeling. What's the feeling? Is there been lots of events in your life that have caused you to feel annoyed?
So are you annoyed with yourself
Yeah,
when you let down other people because you're late?
My father always expected everyone to be perfect, and I think that I was a bit like that, especially if they're British.
Now, isn't it so funny, isn't it? Now, when you just let yourself go to there, it's just like that, isn't it? Can you see that? Can you see what it's all about? You now expect perfection.
I'm angry because I do expect it.
But your father expected perfection of you. And how did that feel?
Well, I haven't really been critical of it. I think it's done us.
Now you're intellectualising it.
Yeah. It didn't do us any harm. That's what I'm saying.
Now you... It happened, but it's no big deal. Can you see what... Now, it's lovely you brought up this example, because can you see what we do? Can you see what we do? And all of us have been guilty of doing this, right? It's not something that's unique. Yeah. We just say, yes, the law of attraction brought me this thing, but it's nothing to do with me, unless it's good, of course. If it's good, it had to have something to do with me, right? But if it's like uncomfortable to me, then it can't have had anything to do with me. And the truth is, it's got everything to do with you. Everything to do with you. And you need to at least start admitting that to yourself even. Right? God's laws are perfect. They expose everything. But you can see what we do is we feel the top level emotion, in this case annoyance, which is just an anger-based emotion, which is just separating us from the underlying causal emotion. And yet, in your discussion, you were talking, and then all of a sudden you start talking about your dad and perfection. And there's the key to everything. But you don't want to feel it. And the next words were, like, yeah, but it's no big deal. Right? It's a huge deal. Like, being expected as a little child to do everything perfectly from day one, that's a huge deal. Like, that is a terrible burden that you place on your children. Right? Your father placed a terrible burden on you. Now, I'm not condemning or judging your father, right? He has his own emotional reasons why he did that, and he needs to experience those, live or past. He needs to experience those. The truth is that it's a terrible burden to place that on you as a child, and you are not letting yourself experience that because you want to believe your father was good. So you won't allow yourself to believe or to feel the emotion of how terrible you felt having to be perfect all the time. So go there. Forget about, and this is one thing what I like about the John Bradshaw book, because it says in there, your parents' emotions or reasons are superfluous.
What?
Superfluous. It is of no consequence in your discussion of your own emotion. Because if you justify your parents, what are you doing? You're justifying the reason for your emotion. In the end, what are you doing? Tuning out of your own emotion. You're minimising your own emotion. Right? You're going to
become empowered with understanding where they were at, perhaps.
You will only understand after you've dealt with your emotion, not before. See, what we do is we intellectually skip over everything, skip over all the emotion, and we say, no, I really want to understand my parents. They were nice parents and they were loving. They did their best for me and all that stuff, right? And all of that might be true, but what you've just done is avoided all of your own painful emotions. Because you're now saying, because they were nice and they did their best, I'm not allowed to feel what I feel. And what you're going to need to learn to do is, I'm allowed to feel what I feel. I'm allowed to know what I know. I'm allowed to think what I think. I'm allowed to... These are what you will need to be allowed to do if you're going to feel your emotions. So one of the biggest blocks you have right now is all of this justification that you have about your parents and how they treated you. That's a huge block. Yeah? Big block.
Are you saying there for your own healing to face that, but not to, that doesn't mean to blame?
As soon as you blame, you're now projecting.
Yep.
So I can state the truth. My mother never hugged me my entire life.
And feel it.
And feel what that felt like.
Without
right?
blame.
without blaming my mother. She had her own reasons to do that, right? But if I want to blame my mother, I'm allowed to do that too, if I want. But you're never going to get to the bottom of the underlying emotion. But you can blame her for 6 months if that's how you feel like doing first. You're allowed to do that too. But it'd be better if you can connect to the underlying emotion, was that feeling of, like, what does it mean if your mother's never hugged you? What does it mean?
So that's a more ideal way.
Yeah. So let yourself feel that. Now, my mother was 16 when she gave birth to me, like, and her mother was 16. So do you think they had many mothering skills? Like, my grandmother was 32 when I was born. So do you think they've had many mothering skills to pass down to each other? Obviously not, hey? And then my grandmother lived in this abusive, violent, alcoholic man who constantly abused her and beat her up and everything. You know, so of course my mother doesn't know what love is, really.
So
But that's immaterial.
by you understanding that about your mother and your grandmother, does that empower you to work through your process?
No.
No, or is it irrelevant?
Often it's the opposite. It shuts down the process. Because what it does is I'm justifying them all the time, and what am I doing when I'm doing that?
Not knowing your own.
Then I'm not allowed to feel what I feel because they're nice.
Yeah.
And my mum is nice. But there's some terrible emotions that I've had to deal with because of her treatment of me. And there's some terrible emotions you've had to deal with even when your mum and dad were nice. Because they denied those emotions that you now have to deal with. How they treated you. And if you're constantly justifying them, you're not going to look at yourself. You need to state the truth about everything. And this gets down to a really big issue, actually.
Especially annoyed.
Well, we found the core of emotion. It's just whether you want to feel it, isn't it?
I probably still don't know how to actually feel it though. How to, like, does it mean talking about it or something?
No. Obviously talking about it can help you. Yeah? But feeling an emotion and talking about it are two totally different things. You know, this is what unfortunately, what a lot of group type therapies do. We talk about the emotion, but very few people in the talking about it really connect with it, the emotion, right?
There are a lot of people in life who want everything to be absolutely perfect. They do their absolute best. Everything has to be crossed and dotted. And the world's just not like that. Life's just not like that. And there is actually a religion out there that they, I was told, when they're making handmade carpets that are beautifully, beautifully handcrafted, and if it's really perfect, they actually put a mistake in there, just because nothing is to be 100% perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they will actually make a mistake in all their carpets.
Yeah. So what was the reason for that comment?
Well, actually accepting that everything is not perfect.
Yep.
And don't expect it to be.
Yep, but see, aren't you intellectualising the whole thing again?
Yeah. But then we get annoyed, which is an emotion, when it's not perfect.
Yeah, but see, if I'm annoyed when it's not perfect, there's an emotion I need to feel. If I just go down the track, if I need to...
You've got to deal with it, don't you? So you've got to deal with that emotion, which might be your upbringing that everything has to be perfect, but it doesn't.
Yeah, but the thing is, I have a feeling inside of me that it does. So what do I do with that?
Can't you, you say you can't intellectually deal with it?
No, you won't be able to... Remember, everything's in the soul, not in my head. So I'm going to have to feel like I need to be perfect. And I'm going to have to feel where that began.
Well, I think we have probably accepted that it was probably from child.
But we've only accepted when we've experienced the emotion. And if I haven't experienced the emotion, then I haven't accepted. I can tell myself all I like that I've accepted. But if I haven't experienced the emotion, I have yet to accept. You see, this is the problem with our intellect. Right? We can tell ourselves all these things, right? And come to believe half of them as well. When inside of our soul, we still haven't dealt with them. right?
How can you deal with something that's on a daily basis from the time you're born?
By feeling the emotion.
But you're saying to go back and feel every day of your life as a child.
If that's what's required, you are going to need to do that,
And
yes.
you don't discover it until you're 60.
Yes, I agree. Can you see how much you want to avoid your emotion? Because there's a very strong emotional projection coming from you right now. I want to avoid that process. There must be an easier way. And I'm saying to you, no, there's not an easier way. You are going to need to feel all those emotions. And you don't want that to be true, and that's okay. You're allowed to not have that true if that's what you want. But what I'm saying is it's the only way to one with God. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah.
When you were exploring your sadness over the last moments,
Yep.
you said that you have some more to experience and that you haven't got to the bottom of it, or there's more to it. So using the example of the lady who talked about her annoyance, and if she actually gets to the bottom of that, then she might get her passport the next day.
Yep.
How does someone know then that they've actually dealt with that, or that there's more connected to it?
Yeah.
Okay. But
Same way.
So to the same deep emotion, or it could be just another one attached to it.
Well, it doesn't really matter. If you're feeling all of your emotions, you're going to feel what is coming up the next time, the next time, the next time, the next time. You're not going to be selective. Look at what a child does. In the first century, it said very clearly, unless you become like a little child, you cannot enter the kingdom of heaven. What does a child do? Experiences everything there and then. Don't they?
Unless they get stopped.
Unless they get shut down. Yeah. And this is how you will become. You will experience everything as soon as it occurs. Do you want to do that?
Yes.
Lots of you don't want to do that. Well, lots of you believe that at this moment, that's dangerous. I'm afraid of that. What's going to happen? What's that going to look like? How much of a mess is my life going to be if I do that? Right? And these are all of the fears that you have that are coming up, saying, "Oh no, I can't do that." Like some of you even feel a sense of panic. What's he telling me?
So these feelings of panic, of blocking, really what is blocked is the mind, yes? The mind is blocking.
The mind through... Well, what's actually coming up is there's an emotion coming up that I don't want to feel. And if one of the emotions coming up is, I don't want to feel, then the mind's going to say, oh, okay, I'll help you not feel.
This seems to be like the person picture or scenario of the majority of people who live, say, in the Nordic countries like Scandinavia, Britain, America. The people, say, who live in Eastern Europe, not the majority, not everyone, but say Cuba or Brazil, they seem to be somehow suffering or experiencing the exact opposite. Like emotions are bubbling up all the time, and there's like maybe even more chaos in their lives than there is in the person who seems to block the emotion before it gets too scary. So would you say that in the end what you need is to be aware of your emotions, of what is actually happening? Because otherwise you will end up with chaos.
The only time you end up with chaos is if you don't allow yourself to feel the causal emotion to completion.
Projection.
That's when you end up with chaos. Because chaos is the projection of emotion onto everyone and everything around you. That only happens when you avoid. I do agree that many of the countries you mentioned, like Cuba and South America and so forth, are more passionate. They allow more passion. And that it actually makes it easier for them to access underlying emotion. However, where it goes wrong is when they don't allow themselves to actually take full responsibility for those emotions and they blame others for them.
So they're being tossed around by false emotions mainly without being able to go to the core because they're not aware.
Yeah, so let's say one of them feels annoyed. He'll come up you right into your face and he will tell you right there and then, I'm annoyed with you, right? Now, a man in Britain says he's annoyed, and what does he do? You know, he sits down and just... like, I spent a bit of time in the subway last trip there, it was quite interesting. Have you ever been on the subway in England, like in London? Isn't that an interesting experience? I was quite amazed by it, actually.
So just sorry, would you say that to be conscious of these core emotions and that process is also important, that you can't just sort of just feel, you also need to be aware of the feeling?
No, what I'm saying is you need to feel everything. You need to feel everything and love feeling everything. However, when they are capping-based emotions like anger, fear, doubt, and lots of other types of emotions like that, jealousy, neediness, and all those kind of capping emotions, you need to understand that all of those are covering over the real things.
So real feelings are aware by themselves?
The real feelings are there, and you're just avoiding them by being in this state. Right? So a man who's in South America screaming and yelling at you, he's passionate, which is great, but he's avoiding his underlying emotions still. The man who's sitting on the subway stewing in England, not feeling anything, right, is still avoiding them. He's shutting himself down with detunement, with numbness, but he's still avoiding the underlying emotions he feels. The key is to get to the underlying emotion, to experience that. When you experience that, all of those capping ones don't occur. None of them occur.
Are there any clues on how to do that?
Isn't that what I've been talking about? Because I thought that's what I said.
If on my journey I've attracted an occupation, which I'm a school teacher, and I'm suddenly coming to the realisation that, I need to be heard, does that mean when I am beginning to, or I deal with the wholeness of the issue, that suddenly the occupation won't appeal to me anymore? Do I need to be
It may not.
open to that?
Yeah, you need to be open to that.
I'm going to go to work on Monday.
And listen, all of you need to be open to the fact that your entire life will change. Are you open to that? Right? It's easy to say, but I tell you what. Are you open to actually having a different partner than you've got right now? Are you open to that? Are you open to having your children not wanting to see you ever again? Are you open to that? Can you see what you might need to be open to?
Everything.
Everything. Every possible thing you need to be open to. Because we're talking about your emotions. You need to be open to them. Right? And that's going to need courage, isn't it?